Suppose, Lord Russell, this film were to be looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time. What would you think it's worth telling that generation?
Mind spins and spirals like the card cogito. I think, therefore, but do I even know? Hume said the sun might not rise in the morning. Patterns ain't proof, just habits we adorn. Russell's teapot floating out in the void. Invisible doubts that can't be destroyed. Belief ain't a bird and the skeptic employs. Question the noise, the cosmos ploys. Skeptic's eyes always peeping the fraud. Truth ain't handed down, it's wrestled from the gods. Doubts my temple, my faith is flawed. Think it through twice before I applaud. Induction wobbles like a table with no leg. Hume's knife cuts leave certainty begging. A billion white swans, blowing black renegade. Shatter the mirror, the cracks cascade. Cogito feels strong, but is it really? Thoughts build castles, clouds act silly. Russell's pot spins in the ether so freely. Prove it exists or the claim's too dreamy. Am I the dreamer or the dream in the show? The car wrestled devils, still didn't know. Faith and senses, they play tricks on a low. Truth's a mirage in a desert of woe.
When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out. Never let yourself be diverted either by what you wish to believe or by what you think could have beneficent social effects if it were believed. But look only and solely at what are the facts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another show of Skeptic Philosophy. I am your host, as always, Robert, and today we have a guest on that's been on the panel many times and likely needs no introduction. So we'll let the mustache and the man speak for himself. How goes it? So you're finally a main guest. You've been on a panel like many times.
Yeah.
You're competing
being
with
a main guest, but you know.
Yeah, you're competing with the I guess Kurt for being on the panelist the most.
Since you paid me so much money, I felt I had to be a main guest. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. The subject that was picked today was how theists use philosophy to prop up their position. And I know that we had talked about a little bit. This is some of it's the grounding, and some of it's just fallacious arguments inside of philosophy that they're using to kind of prop up their position. So with that started, where do you want to start?
Yeah, like I think it is a very interesting question because it takes many forms. So I think that the more sophisticated fish would say something like, they're into this grounding lark. Like, what is grounding anyway, right? So, that tends to be the main thing. Well, you're an atheist. Yeah. By definition, that means, you're a complete, you are a horrible person. I don't know if you're aware of that, but yes. Horriblism is equivalent to atheism. Horriblism.
It's the essence. Horriblism is the essence of atheism.
Yeah. Yes. In effect, it's the grounding, one might say.
Yeah.
And that's a position well known to be taken since 2,000 years ago, plus probably. So, why deny it? Horriblism. Look that up in philosophical terms. It means something completely different. Anyway, look. So, I think in that sense, we get, the main fallacies, right? Is higher up is this grounding lark. So for the transcendental argument, they want to know how an atheist grounds logic, for instance.
Yeah.
But what do they mean by grounding logic in that sense? And I'm not even sure that they know what they mean. I think it's just one of these buzzwords which gets thrown around. So in philosophical terms, then it's, as you say, and the essence of something maybe, or the value, gives value to if X if X is
If
is a
X is
grounding.
grounded in Y, then X obtains in virtue of Y.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it is something which they consider to be necessary as well. So grounding could be considered a necessary value for the extension of whatever it is you're talking about, logic or, flowers or trees. Look at the trees. Look at the trees. What grounds the trees? Got to be God, hasn't it? But like that seems to miss over some parts about it, because saying it has value because of X doesn't tell you anything about X, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't tell you anything about Y even, right? Because there's no one way back the other way. So when they say, look, we can ground logic, right? Well, yeah, okay, but that doesn't tell you anything. If you use it as value, that doesn't tell you anything about whether God exists or not. It just means
Yeah.
that there's something there which is could be abstract or not, right? It could be so abstract that it makes little difference, or there's no causal or correlation with why. And yet, you can claim that it gives it value
Yeah.
because that's what you value, right? And so by intuition, that means that it in fact grounds it. But of course, that's just a first-person testimony once again, and a claim at that, which I've never heard cashed out by the theist.
Yeah.
What do you mean by God grounds, right? What does it mean to ground something like logic if you've got to explain what that grounding is using logic?
Yeah, it's weird. I think all of this started, the best I could tell. I tried to trace this back, this kind of ideal, to see where it all got started. And the best I can find, Aristotle makes a quote that is, we think we have knowledge of a thing when we know the cause of which the fact depends. And I think that's kind of the oldest thing of
Hmm?
what makes a fact is when we think we have knowledge of the dependent thing upon which this makes that a fact.
Right. So, in other words, this would be a justification,
Yeah.
right? So, knowledge of the justification of why such a thing is a fact, or the effect that leads to the causation that leads to an effect,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and both of those are problematic when you think of them as grounding, right? Because it means that you're just begging the question on grounding. Well, what grounds the ground?
Yeah.
If you're going to
Yeah.
say it's a justification, right? Well, what justifies your grounding? And is that really a grounding then? If it needs
What's weird about this, and I mentioned it to you before, I think it's weird that we even use the term grounding to me, because like we have this old idea of like foundationalism, and the older philosophers, they go back to this, but what holds the earth up? And then, what holds that up? And there's this idea that like, no, there has to be some kind of foundational isness that makes it all happen. And then as we get further along, we're like, no, the earth just floats. It's just suspended, So now when we use the grounding, like the ground, even the ground it's just floating.
Yeah. I mean, floating-ish. I mean, if you
Yeah,
use
sure.
Einstein's model, of course, you're talking about curved space-time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so is that the grounding? I don't know. But even then, the point being is that if you say grounding is a justification, X justifies Y, therefore it's a grounding, then you're just begging the question of saying, look, well, what grounds X?
Yeah.
Right? Z grounds X. Well, okay, what grounds Z? A grounds X. Well, what grounds Z? B? And we're back down to the same issue of an infinite
Yeah.
regress. So either way round, I don't. You're gonna come across the trilemma at some point, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be infinite regress, a foundation, which is presumably what they mean by grounding, really, or a dogma, which is the
Mhm.
other thing they might mean, right?
Well, you could think of this as any individual subject is grounded in another thing, and when that thing no longer resembles the specific subject that we're talking about, then that thing is grounded. Like if we say the red ball, when we use, for example, if a red ball is necessarily a colored ball also, right? So if we say a red ball, I had something I was going with this. So what makes it a red ball? Well, it's not grounded in its or what makes it a colored ball? Is it that it's a red ball? No, what makes it a colored ball seems like a separate fact. It's a reality fact that makes it a colored ball, and that seems to ground out with electromagnetic field of atoms interact with the light, and that's just the frequency that's put off. Right? That's what makes it a colored ball. It doesn't have anything to do with it being red per se. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah.
This is the old argument. Like, does logic ground out in some other logical principle, or does it ground out in like reality? Just the bruteness of reality is, and that's where it grounds.
Yeah. Okay. In my view, it doesn't. Of course, reality doesn't ground out, logic, because logic is an abstract language. Not to say that we didn't get the idea of logic from looking at reality. Right. Those are two different things. Well, they're different things, right? Because like they have this, like the same with the mathematical axioms, they have assumptions which just are not, which are false.
Okay.
Right. And therefore, if you want to say now that logic is grounded in something which is false, then that's okay. But I don't think that's what's meant by grounding either, right? Same way mathematics, or shall we say geometry, is grounded in, Euclid's axioms.
Yeah.
Right. Well, those axioms are not true. There is no such thing as an infinitely thin line.
Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah.
Or a point. There's no such thing as a point.
Right.
In the Euclidean sense, anyway.
Yeah. Well,
so it can't be grounded by the axioms.
The problem that we have, like when we make statements like the arrow, what's Xenophon or Zeno's arrow, where the arrow is traveling the half a distance. This is the old game.
Zeno's paradox. Yeah.
Right. Can I clap? Is it possible for me to clap? And if we're using the strictest logic of the division of halves, it's not possible for me to ever clap. It's just like, but it happens in physical reality. It happens. So that's something that I think either the logic is that we're using there as far as the halves, it's not a perfect model of the external reality. There's some other factor that's going on there that's just not incorporated in everything has to reduce by halves. There's more to it than that. There's some external factor of reality. And I wanted to mention a few quotes from a few different people that I think shows the change of the mentality about this. One is from Bertrand Russell, and this is a very famous quote that Bertrand Russell said: "The world consists of facts, not things." This idea that facts are primary and not things. And then Ludwig Wittgenstein said, "The world is the totality of facts, not of things." And then we get, especially as we get in more modern time, David Armstrong, a present philosopher, says truths are made by reality. And then Professor Jonathan Schaff says grounding concerns what is more fundamental and what depends on what. And there's many philosophers now that are arguing with the whole grounding thing in logic, that logic is just a shadow or a reflection of the physical consistency of reality. So at some point that it just has to ground out. It has to be a model of and reflective of a reality.
Okay. See now, this is where I'd probably disagree.
Okay.
Look, it's again going back to there's a mathematical landscape.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's 2 points about this, right? There's different types of areas within this mathematical landscape, some of which apply to reality and some of which do not, and some of which we cannot know whether it does or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, for instance, when we talk about logical possibilities, right, well, we're not talking about actual world or reality. right? Because we're just talking about things which logically have no contradiction, and
Yeah.
none of that is grounded. I don't want to use that word, but none of that is anything to do with reality. This area or outside of the mathematical landscape that does apply to reality.
Are you sure? The reason that I ask is
100%.
even when we say 1 + 1 = 2, I literally think that it is only that there is a 1 and another 1, and now we can observe these things. Like if there wasn't a reality, 1 + 1 = 2 wouldn't even be coherent. Like it's not a it's not a it doesn't it's not reflective of a thing. So I think there's something about
Yeah.
reality that
Well,
is foundational to it.
sure. So there has to be a reality just to have minds to be able to conceive of
That
language.
too.
So, yeah, okay, I grant you. Look, I'm not. The issue here is the mathematical landscape is much bigger than the landscape of maths which applies to reality.
Okay.
Right. So there is this area. If you just look at set theory, there's this area outside of the mathematical landscape that applies to reality. Now, inside, your example is correct, but outside, it's not so correct. Right.
Yeah.
So you like people are looking right. So at topological models of, 5-dimensional topological models, right, and they're
Mhm.
looking at the surface and trying to calculate or make calculations for surface area on a 5D model. Right. But we have no experience of a 5D model. That's
Right.
nothing to do with reality.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't know whether 5D is a thing that can be perceived. Our minds can't perceive it. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Could we
it's
make
about
some kind of
yeah,
mathematical model of it? Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, exactly. Right. So that's just showing that there is this area which is nothing to do or not to do with reality as such. Now we use the same systems, right? We're more complex systems to work out surface areas on 5D and 6D models, etc. Right? And there are, there's some interesting mathematical facts that come from those kind of calculations.
Yeah.
Right. So some of Hilbert's, or at least one of Hilbert's problems in mathematics has been solved by analyzing 5D surfaces. So it's not that it's not useful. Mathematics isn't useful, but it's just that it's
Yeah.
not. It doesn't apply to reality at the moment, at least anyway. Right? Until we find 5-dimensional spaces, then we've
Yeah.
got no use for it as such. So, although yes, I certainly agree. 1 + 1 = 2, or I prefer to say 1 - 1 = 0. Just as let's get the law of identity going and the
Yeah. Yeah.
excluded middle, right?
Right.
See how easy logic falls out of mathematics, and yet the other
Yeah.
way around, it's not so easy.
Yeah. When you're talking about like negative mathematics, you can't even say that it's reflective of a thing in reality. It's reflective of potential. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like there's no,
potentials.
you're right. There's no such thing as a -1 orange, right? That's not a thing that exists in reality.
Yeah, but like in reality, if you have, if you have, oh, I suppose so. Yeah, if you take 1 from 1, it's -2, isn't it? Oh no, because
Yeah.
it's not a minus, it's a +1. Yeah, so I'm taking +1 and then taking -1 as an operation, and it doesn't matter. You can write that in different ways. The interesting thing for me is, look, it also defines what an equals sign is when you say it that way. So that's quite interesting. But okay, so those are just operational signs as well. They're not obviously mathematical numbers which apply to reality. These are just operations. So what has that got to do with reality? Do we see the same processes going on? And as you say, not with minus numbers, we don't.
Yeah.
And probably not with division either.
Yeah.
So in fact, maybe we don't even with multiplication. I think I probably only see addition in reality. So yeah,
Yeah. I'm
that's how that
curious.
works.
We were talking about deduction yesterday. Do you think this is where the majority of these kind of fallacious grounding positions happen in the deduction, or do you think there really is a problem with grounding in deduction?
No, I think there's a problem in grounding in both induction and deduction.
Okay.
Right?
Or
So,
deduction. Let's do the
but
deduction.
let's stay with deduction, because
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is where most theists live. They live in the world of
Yes.
deduction. They're not that particularly keen, I guess, on induction,
Yeah.
as it doesn't necessarily prove they're God, right? According to
Right, right,
Hume.
right.
Amazing how they will accept some things from Hume and not other things. So they will
Well,
tell, they accept Hume when it comes to that, but they will not accept Hume when it comes to his conclusions about first person perspective. Right? So they will tell you all day long, well, I've met Jesus, so therefore you should believe.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that's another fallacy that they get into. Yeah, go
So you
ahead.
want to do one of the deductions and
Yeah.
see the breakdown on it and see where it is we're running into problems. Do you want to use
Okay.
the classic Socrates
Yep,
or
absolutely.
a ball, or let's use Socrates?
Yeah.
So let's see if I could get it where I have it, how it was originally stated. Or however you want to form it. Oh, here it is. So two premises form a necessary conclusion. For example, premise, Socrates is a man. Second premise, all men are mortal. Conclusion, Socrates is mortal. So you've mentioned this to me, that you think this is very circular. It's these are two stated facts that come to a conclusion that cannot fail to obtain, so to speak. That Socrates is mortal if he is a man and all men are mortal. And so do you see a problem with this, or where are we getting started on this?
Yeah. Okay. So look, the problem here that I see is that it cannot fail to obtain, right? Well, that's based on the assumption that you agree with the truth of the premises. So
Right.
if we agree that the premise is true, or both premises are true, then I would grant you that it cannot fail to obtain. But the problem is and when you're talking about an argument, a deductive argument for God, I'm going to disagree. That's my
Yeah.
fundamental position. So we're never going to get to the point where we can just go, oh yeah, of course, it's a necessary conclusion. So I'm going to say to the theist, well, how do you justify premise one? Right?
Yeah.
So in the case of this, what was it? Socrates is a man?
Socrates is a man, right? The second
Socrates is
one
a
is
man.
all men are mortal.
Is he?
Right.
How do we know that Socrates is a man, right? Okay, he says he's a man. Okay, that's one thing. But then, maybe he's a trans man, right? Maybe.
Or we could play with the second premise, and you still have the same problem.
I mean, yeah. Why? Because what are we looking for? Especially in the second premise, it's more obvious, right?
Yeah,
All men
more
are
obvious.
mortal.
All men are
Well,
mortal.
how many men do we know that aren't mortal? Well,
Yeah,
none,
none.
obviously, right? But how many men do we know that always will be mortal? Right? I know lots of people that are not dead.
Yeah.
Does that
Good
mean
so
that
far.
they're going to die? Yeah, as I said, I told my dad that once, right? Dad, he said, "What do you want to do when you grow up, son?" I said, "I want to live forever." And he said, "How's that working out for you?" I said, "So far, so good."
Exactly.
So I haven't died yet. Am I mortal? I don't know. I don't know if I'm mortal or not. So can we guarantee that the premise all men are mortal is
Holds.
true?
Yeah.
No, we
we
can't.
can't
But
guarantee it.
what we can do is give an incredibly good inductive argument to say that it is true that all men are mortal.
Yeah.
Right. But
Sure.
bearing in mind, we've now introduced a premise in the justifying or the grounding, right, which is an inductive premise.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, does that mean that the deductive argument now is really reliant on something which is a premise which can't necessarily be true? And if
Yeah.
it can't necessarily be true, how can we get a necessary conclusion from it?
This is not Bertrand. I'm sorry. This is Hume's problem with deduction. This is his whole problem with it. This is why he's like, everything is inductive. Everything is, we just haven't seen it yet. Like all men are mortal until we find one that's not mortal. It's just, as far as every individual example that we have, it's like the sun rising. Actually, in my intro song, I don't know if you noticed that statement in the intro song, that the sun rising is not a guarantee. This was some of the problem that he had with with the subject of deduction. But I wanted to read you a statement that is about this example that we have of deduction. The conclusion is deduced from the premise, but what grounds the fact that Socrates is mortal? Presumably, it is facts about his biological nature, not the fact that we can derive the statement from the premise. So this is whatever I'm talking about. If we're saying that it's grounded in reality, then it's nothing about the logical statement that is making him mortal. There is something about the biological nature that is grounding that. In the same way with the red ball that I mentioned earlier, there's something in that is grounding that. And now what grounds that? Well, that goes further. When we do the red ball thing, we can say what makes it a color is that these light waves are interacting with the magnetic frequencies. But what makes these frequencies happen? Well, then there's atoms. And now we get all the way to energy. We're like, energy is. And this seems to be like, how do we know anything more than that? Well, we can't get any more than that.
Yes. There's different types of energy, but yes, you're right. I mean, potential energy, of course, is energy yet to be accounted for, which is stored in kinetic form. So, or rather the other way around. So, yeah, so, yeah, okay. So, when it comes to energy, right, there are at least some well-defined equations which give you a specific definition for energy, right? So the square of energy is, right, the square of the quad of mass times the square of the speed of light plus the square of the momentum times the square of the speed of light. Right, so that's pretty well defined in terms of allowing you to see that energy has a formula which says that it can be redefined in any one of those terms. Right, you can always swap the equation round, so you've got just the speed of light on one side, or you've got just the momentum, or you've got just the mass. Right, so all three of those things are equivalent in some sense. Right, bearing in mind there's variables still, right? But so in that sense, when we say energy, right, it's like it might be like this thing which is like the same as gravity in that way, right? Gravity is something else. Energy could be something else again, but that's how we're labeling it in order to give it these equivocations between these various other variables that we can measure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when we say, like there's an energy measurement, in some sense, we're just limiting the problem down to, normally it's a flow of electrons in a particular substance, right? And we call that the energy, right? The electromagnetic energy. We're very rarely talking about mass energy when you were talking about that. So again, it's this is one of the issues I have as well, right? Is that, look, these different subjects have got their own lingo, their own definitions.
Yes.
And that makes being able to talk about things in a generality very difficult. So that means grounding is really not very informative, because grounding seeks to take something and make it more fundamental or more general. Right, and that's always going to be difficult, right? Because we're going to be using specific definitions of terms.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I say to you, look, take the maths example where we've got some idea of certainty, right? And I know you're going to disagree with this, which is why I'm saying it. But we've got some idea of certainty: 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, and we know that because of the axioms by which we've determined the complete scale, right, of how we're using arithmetic in this case and numbers.
Okay. I agree with you in a general sense. 1 + 1 = 2. That seems to be an established thing, but I think that set theory does play with this a little bit, that there are different values of one, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. One is in itself a variable, for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
But in maths, that doesn't matter because they're units. It's just 1 unit plus 1 unit, right?
Yeah.
But we don't
Of
write the
equal.
unit in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter wherever the unit is, right? So yeah, 1 unit plus 1 unit just says that if your 1 is the same 1 and you add it together
Yeah.
with another
It's 2.
1, it's 2 of the same 1, you know,
Sure.
2 of the
Of the
unit.
same
1
one.
unit plus 1 unit equals 2 units. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what the unit is, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, that's that. You know, there's no strict definition of unit here, which is not important when it comes to 1 plus 1 equals 2,
So
because
the
these axioms are already built into the system. Go ahead.
Sure. So the big question is, and I think why the majority have come to see, how is it that these things are used wrongly by theists for their positions?
Yes, okay. Well, it depends on the argument that they're trying to give, of course, right? So we've been at the top and we've been talking about grounding, right? And the pushback really for me is, well, you know, can you demonstrate that logic can be grounded
Yeah.
without using logic? Because I'm pretty sure you can't. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you are, it's circular, and you know you're just saying, well, the grounding of logic is logic,
Yeah.
and
Or whatever else you're picking.
how is that informative in any way? Well, how can you do that without using logic? Is my argument,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How can we talk about value without using logic to talk about value? In which case, how can we talk about the value of logic without using logic? It's completely circular.
Hey man, logic is grounded in X. Now this is just a fact. Can we define what X is? No, not in the slightest. Right? It's so this is what I feel like theists do. They do this. Logic is grounded in this thing in God that logic could not be if there was not God. But this is like you could replace this just as an assertion with anything. You could do this with the penguin, you know, or a thing that isn't even yet here. You could, but it's not coherent to say this any more than logic is grounded in pen. You know, for me, it doesn't do anything. It just seems to be an assertion that we can't make a correlation for.
Yeah, for that reason, though, isn't it? Is that if you tried to make a justification for it, you'd be using logic.
Well, that too, yeah.
So,
yeah. So, what logic can you use that grounds logic? Right? It's a problem.
it's just nonsensical. It's worse than a problem. It's nonsensical, and it's the same problem that theists have with saying God grounds. Right? Well, how does he ground? Well, it's in his nature. Well, what? So God means God. So you're just defining God into existence at that point. If you say, no, you know, good is God's nature, then yeah, we're not saying anything about good at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're just making a claim that God exists and that whatever God thinks is right is right.
Yeah. So you mentioned some other fallacies too, and I don't mind beating out this pan a little more as far as grounding, but I'm curious if you were interested in going on to any of the other fallacies or that you see that might even be tangentially related to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, equivocation is a huge one, and that's kind of related to grounding as well, because that's what they're doing. At one point, they're saying, look, you know, how is this grounded? Well, it's grounded in God's nature, right? So, well, you're just saying he's grounded in God again, right?
Yeah.
Because so there's no inclusive, there's no extra information being given. It's just an equivocation on the word nature and God, because like it's not, if you're saying it's grounded in God's nature, well, so you're saying that my actions are grounded in my nature, right? Does that make them right? Absolutely fucking not. Right. So what makes it right? That God's nature is right.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
going to ask
Right.
the same question again, and you're going to get the same answer. Well, he's right because he's God. So straight away, we've got circularity going on, right?
This is an old question about how can you say God is good? It was the old question. It was the old joke. And it's like the person is like, because that's what God is. Right. I know. But how can you say that God is good? Like you have some internal parameters on what is good for you to even be able to make the statement that God is good. There has to be some internal value system that you're running to say that the God is good, the devil is bad, right? These aren't things that are inherent to their nature. They're inherent to your value judgment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. So, like as I say, that's fine. But so the equivocation fallacy, though, is being what's used here, right, to equivocate between these different things, and they're not aware. They think that they're going to say, okay, look, yeah, nature is God, right? And
Yeah.
then you're going to be fine with it. Oh well, no, if you should have said he should have said it was grounded in his nature first, and then I would have understood. Right? But no, of course not. Just as you say, when you say God is good, it just turns out to be circular. Why is
Yeah.
God good again? And we're going to ask the same question. And it's going to go down another infinite regress of the same question, trying to justify a deductive argument with premises,
Yeah.
which it somehow have to be cashed out in induction. Otherwise, they don't mean. Otherwise, they're just going to be circular. You're going to just refer to the conclusion and say, well, the conclusion of the argument is such, and that's what grounds the premises.
Yeah. It's begging the question all the way. It's the answer to the question is inside of the question.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what defines a deductive argument, right? So, like, this is not fucking news to anybody.
Right.
The difference is that people like overplay what a deductive argument actually is,
Yeah.
right? Because we're often using it as a dialectic tool. And when we use it as a dialectic tool, we're smuggling in induction all the time and not worrying about it because we accept the inductive claims, right?
Yeah.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And if it's not extraordinary, then our standard for having low or high priors is extremely low. Which means that, when you say to me, I like oranges or tangerines or something, right? I'm just going to go, yeah, okay. Like people like tangerines. You're a monkey. You you know what I mean. Monkeys like fruit, right? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you like a tangerine? That makes sense. Do I know it? No, I don't know it, but it's inductively it can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
shown to be the case, and
Yeah.
that's what happens in everyday conversation, right? When we're not, when it's not an extraordinary claim, it's because it is a mundane claim, which means we will take on just even the slightest amount of an inductive argument to demonstrate it. Yeah, no, I've come across loads of people that have given me money when I've asked them for it. So is it
Yeah.
reasonable to believe that I asked somebody for 10 quid and they gave it to me?
Yeah. So it seems like every deductive argument has a general premise and then it has like a larger, more inclusive premise. And the one that was used earlier was the larger, more inclusive premises was that, all men are mortal. And then the more specific one is that
Universal.
Socrates. Yeah. So they have these things, but they don't always have these. And I remember I mentioned to you the one from, what's the Ancient Alien show guy that with the crazy hair when he made the argument about Mount I can't remember the name of the damn mountain where he says that they had granite up there, the stones were made out of granite and that humans couldn't cut granite. So he makes the first statement that the stones are made out of granite and that humans were not able to cut granite. And I guess that's the more of the general one. And then the specific one is that those stones were made out of. But if any of those fail, then obviously the premise is incorrect. In this case, they're not granite. They're made out of redstone. So there was a misrepresentation. Can humans cut redstone at that time? Yes, they could. But either the general or the more specific could in any way fail, then the conclusion's just not necessarily true. In fact, it seems that it's almost definitely not true if there's any failure of the two premises. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd go a little further. Is what I'm saying is that if any of those premises rely on an argument which has induction, then the final conclusion can't be guaranteed either. I mean, like literally, I don't see any way that you could have a deductive argument which you disagree with the premise on having a necessary conclusion. It's just not possible because ultimately there's going to be some stopping point. It's either going to be an infinite regress of deductive arguments, right?
Hmm.
If you're a global skeptic, shall we say, or a universal skeptic, right? So in this extreme case I'm talking about, where every premise is questioned, right?
Yeah.
How do you know that? What's the argument for that? What's the argument for that? Like
Yeah.
some clubhouse debates I've heard. Um, Nonetheless, yeah. So like, if that's the case, right, then you just have an infinite regress of justifications. In which case, there is no necessary conclusion, because at no point are you going to agree that the premises are based that are true. Right, you're always going to
Yeah.
be skeptical, and you're always going to ask for another argument, even if you think that argument might be true.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no way
So
to demonstrate certain premises. Like you're just making a premise, but you can't demonstrate the premise.
for sure, you would think that you'd get down to primitives at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and that would be the stopping point. And you just have to say, well, it's a brute fact,
Yeah.
that X is the case, and therefore that's what I've rested everything on, which in itself might be an interesting thing to do, but it's more likely that you're going to stop it at some point by referring to reality and by referring to an inductive argument,
Yeah.
because that can stop it at any point. Right? If we just say, look, I've been round, I've spoken to everybody I possibly can, and of all the people that have died, right, that know of people that have died, they were all living before they died.
Right.
Right? So everybody that was living has died.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Uh,
the theist would refute that Elijah was called up, so that even refute one of the premises of all men are mortal.
Mortal,
That he
yeah.
was called up and
Yeah.
never actually died. So
Sure. But this is a specific case I'm pointing out
yeah.
about deductive arguments, and why they, in my opinion, unless you can give an inductive argument for God's existence, then you're not going to get there through deduction at
Yeah.
all. There's no chance. So all of those arguments are going to be fallacious at one point in one way or another. So the cosmological, the teleological, the ontological, that none of them can give you a necessary conclusion that God exists.
Yeah.
Right? It's absolutely impossible unless you introduce this idea of some kind of inductive argument, right? And evidentialism is a thing, right? But my main point is, if you're ever talking to somebody who doesn't give an evidential argument for God, walk away. Just walk away, because you're going to be wasting your time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's this thing about evidence too, and I've recently been having this conversation about what constitutes evidence in light of all things being considered evidence. Like if we say everything is evidence and there's not a thing that isn't evidence, then what the hell does evidence even mean at that point? And we could do it like if someone says everything that exists is designed, for example, well, by contrast of what? Can you show me something that's not designed so that we can, compare? No,
Yeah.
all things are designed. Like this seems to be like just inherently such a fallacious argument.
Yeah, that one is for sure.
Yeah.
That one is for sure. If it explains everything, then it can't.
Then explains
anything.
nothing. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But more than that, I feel I had a point there. Sorry, which argument were you just talking about?
It's everything, or everything is evidence, or you could look at
Oh
it
yeah,
as,
that was it, right? So so that's what we mentioned yesterday, and what I brought up is, like, I don't know what definition you want to use for evidence. My personal favorite, I guess, at the moment is something that increases the probability of the proposition being correct, however small. Right. So to me, that's what evidence is. And, it's, again, the nature of evidence in itself is not transformatory necessarily. So I think I mentioned to you the black raven paradox.
Yes.
Yesterday. Okay. So which is roughly goes along the lines of, and there's several I've been told now by you.
Yeah.
But the one that I learned was, right, if all ravens are black, right, then anything that isn't black is evidence for the raven being black. Basically meaning that you could look at everything in the universe which isn't black, and if there are no ravens in that set, then ravens must be black if they exist.
Right.
Right? So literally, my door is proof that ravens are black. Not proof, the evidence, I should say. Sorry. My white door is proof that ravens are black.
Mm. Yeah,
Evidence, right? So so I think that goes to show you what a fickle term evidence is in the first place, more
sure.
than it goes to show you that we have this word evidence or evidences, which has this fundamental discipline meaning by which it can't be messed with. If somebody says they've got evidence for God, I readily say, yeah, you probably do. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. You have something which isn't God, right? That's for sure, right? So
yeah. To me, it's like, and I had to pull this up to show you. Like, if I have a bullet here, and let's say Joe's fingerprints are on this bullet, is this evidence? Can this be evidence in a court of law for like another proclamation that he had these bullets or that he shot this individual? And in general, we would say yes. But now, what if I create the scenario that not only every bullet that exists in the world has Joe's fingerprint on it, but literally everything that exists has Joe's fingerprint on it. Is this now evidence for a specific? No, it's not any longer. It's not.
yeah,
So this is the problem with everything is evidence. Like that's the problem that we run into.
look at the trees. That is a really good
Yes.
way. That's a really good example of saying it. It makes it perfectly clear that the
Yeah.
point being made. So yeah, I really appreciate that. So equivocation, right? Changing the meaning of a word. The one we had yesterday, which I thought was the clearest one in the side chat of Snarter, the Saturday Night of the Atheists, was somebody using the word ape, saying, "Well, evolution says you're an ape," and we went, "Yeah, evolution says you're an ape." Okay, so you're still apes, right? Well, does that mean that so what did you come from? Apes? You know?
Right. Right.
Well, yeah, we came from apes, and we're still apes because that's the clade, right? Oh, okay. So that means you think that a chimpanzee or an ape, modern ape, could give birth to you, right? I've put the caveat in, but he doesn't. He just says an ape could give birth to a human. Well, yeah, I mean they can, obviously, because we're apes and we give, well, not
Yeah.
me personally, but the female sex gives that. So, they're like just running around in circles going, ah ha ha, he thinks that we're chimpanzees, or in his word, apes, he thinks we're apes, meaning chimpanzees, right? And
Yeah.
let's laugh at the atheist, Well, yeah, if you mean ape, if you mean modern ape, then no, we're not, we're not descended from modern apes. We're
Right.
descended from ancient apes. Right?
Yeah, they play with these category things all the time. I've pointed it out before that even when they do the terms like thing, they'll use thing and they mean different things. Or even when they use create, they mean different creates. These are different creates.
Mhm.
And they'll say, and I
Yeah.
mentioned that with the cosmological kalam, they do this, that if a thing began to exist, so what they're doing is they're doing like, if you could think of I use the what is it, the swan one, that all swans are white, therefore a Rolls Royce swan is white. Well, no, this is a totally different type of swan on the Rolls Royce, and this is what they do with create. They do all things that are created being compiled ex materia, right? Everything that is pushed together, like this house was ex materia created, opposed to ex nihilo, like the material itself came out of. But they'll do a induction from this position that all things ex materia were compiled, were created, therefore all things that didn't even exist were created by X. So they're using these two different exist to say everything in this category exists now. These in a totally different category must be the same way. No, that's absolutely ridiculous. It's a completely different category.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, the criteria that's something they change as well. So the guy yesterday was talking, and he said, "No, look, the reason the reason bats were included, right, as birds in the taxonomy, birds, right, as the same kind as a bird, right, is because they fly." Which is okay, yeah, all right, well, yeah, we didn't know that, right? But that's never been the argument, right? The argument's always been, look, if you think that taxonomy, right, or species is the same as kind in the Bible, then the Bible gets it wrong,
Yeah.
right? Because that one's mammal and one's whatever avian, I guess,
Yeah. Avian.
right? So that's the problem that we're having with it. It's not that you couldn't find things which are similar between the two,
Sure.
but to say that is just to ignore the external critique that's being given.
Yeah.
And that's they'll do that a lot as well, right? They don't want to take on external critiques, of course. They only want internal critiques because then they think you have to accept their presuppositions about the Bible.
Yeah.
Which is fine still. You can do that and still point out that there are logical inconsistencies in this book. As you would
Sure.
expect, it's a book from 2,000 years ago
And written by different people.
and written by different people over hundreds of years.
Right.
Guess what? You would expect there to be some logical inconsistencies. And in fact, there are quite a few. So when you point that out, they go, yeah, but is it a contradiction? Well, now we're outside of reality again, right? Now we're back to this mathematical model where they're saying, yeah, is it anywhere within the mathematical model possible for this to be true? Yes, it probably is, because the mathematical model is so big and so vast, the landscape, that it includes things which are almost contradictory, as close
Yeah.
to contradictory as you could get in logic.
Yeah.
Right. And not only that, we wouldn't even know some of these things. There are
Yeah.
questions that could be asked that we just can't not know whether they're true or false.
Yeah.
There's just no way to know them. So they'll run off, right, to this, they'll say something, well, about the real world. Look, this is definitely a thing. There's no contradiction here, right? And then you say, well, there is a contradiction in the Bible if you think that, I don't know, human bodies can pass through solid rock, or somebody can walk unaided, can walk on water, or somebody's sight can be returned to them by rubbing mud on their eyes. All of these things just not
A little
possible in the
spit
real
too.
world, or a spit, yeah. These are not possible in the real world, right?
Yeah.
But in the mathematical world, of course, there's no contradiction, so they're possible, right? And that difference, right, is a lot of heavy lifting gets done by them doing exactly that and just saying, well, if it's logically possible, then, well, I think it's S5 logic, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if something is possible, then it's probable, and if it's probable, it's necessary. So that's a step of logic which they're happy to use, but it's what they're saying is a modal scope fallacy. Yeah. Sorry, what's let's
We're gonna do the Q&A in a minute. We're gonna keep on
okay,
going
good,
until
good,
it's have a few more minutes left here. We got about 8 minutes, and we're fixing to open it up. But we've added in the bathroom break thing. I'll run a quick bathroom break before we when we have the panel opened up. But
okay, we are modern apes. Okay, yeah. Well, I meant to say chimpanzee, really, there, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, it's all just grouping. Like, you can't come from X, but X is inside of a category. So you're saying the category rather than the subset inside of the category. It's all just a stupid game that they play.
Yeah, shell game. Yeah, it's literally a shell game, which is unfortunate, really, because it's disingenuous.
Yeah, I mean, you can have the category of money, and then coins are different inside of the category of money. So they're playing a game that pennies aren't dollars. Well, no shit, pennies aren't dollars. They're all inside of the category of money in the same sense that we're all inside of the category of ape. But you're playing a stupid game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is a good way they get around these arguments, right? Is to just say, okay, well, look, they're going to play the set game, right? Or Russell's set paradox.
Yeah.
They're saying, well, is there a set that contains all sets? And they think that that's a deep question. And it's like, well, there are much deeper questions in maths than that. That's almost trivial. That's just a definitional game that they're going to be playing, right? And we've already defined the set as what it's the members that are the elements.
Yeah.
right? So,
What I've always found most fascinating about all their arguments that they do like this, like when they make these exceptions like this, that you're leaving room to poke God in there, when that hole of logic is open, you can poke literally anything else in there, you know? So you can be like, you know, Turu or whatever, everything is dependent upon, all things come back to this, and that you don't have a distinction. Like it's just an assertion at the bottom of it, and we can
yeah,
put anything inside of that assertion.
yeah, that's because they don't want to use the inductive argument, right? I remember once I was talking to somebody, so a theist, and he said to me, yeah, and I was explaining the problem with his argument about being a deductive argument, and saying, look, it's it's circular, tautological, and that's just how that works, right? And
Yeah.
he said, oh, no. Well, what would you do then? So you give me a non-circular argument, right? And I went, oh yeah, okay. So I gave him an inductive argument, and he was saying, yeah, but that's not a deductive argument. And I went, no, of course it's not. It's because it's not circular,
Yeah.
right? So what do you want me to do? You said give you an argument which isn't circular. I gave you an argument which is an
Yeah.
inductive
It's
argument which isn't circular by
sure.
definition. So yeah, there you go. You
Yeah.
said I couldn't do it. I've just done it.
Yeah.
Right? That's
He
the point
wanted a
there.
deductive argument is what he wanted.
He wanted a deductive argument.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we have to give it to him. And
Right. Absolutely.
That's why external critiques, when they're done correctly, are much more powerful.
So I very recently had this conversation. I say very recently, literally last night, I was having this conversation with Pangburn about the evidence things and things that increase the probability of. And the one little problem that I run into regularly is if a thing is not coherent, because of something that we've never seen broken, we have an inference of zero. Like we don't have. So I mentioned to him a cubical sphere or a circle square. Like if we say that every testimony is a type of evidence that increases the probability of, if we have no instances of excluded middle being broken, or we have no instances of non-contradictory being broken, it seems like an input value issue on the Bayesian analysis, because all we have is zero. Like all we have of that ever being broken is zero. So it seems like our probability, no matter how many tests, like if 10 people testify to you that I have seen a circular square, how do we even calculate a percentage of increase if one of our values in the Bayesian analysis is zero? And that's something that I was trying to convey, but unfortunately there was a lot of people that was talking there. But that's a bit of a problem. Because it's not been broken before.
I don't think so. No.
No,
because like I was saying to somebody, it could have been you, I don't know, but like I was saying, so when we do probabilities by sample size, and the sample is always a positive number of some description. Right. So, and the point being is that those are held within a set, right? A set of possibility, and the everything outside the set, right, is impossible, and zero is an impossibility. So there's never a calculation that you can do in statistics which is going to have a zero on the bottom.
So then, how do we create a value for how many times that law has been broke?
Well, I mean, if you're saying that there's no way to get any data, right? That's just making it unfalsifiable. So can't say anything about that at all.
So
we can guess, we can make one up, right?
Right. That seems like that's what you have to do is just like make a number up.
In physics, they use like Kronecker delta symbol for something which is so small it's not even small.
Yeah. But like
smaller than small.
That does seem like we have to do that to say, okay, something that is not logically, like it breaks one of the fundamentals, laws of logic. If something breaks that, what's the probability, of it breaking that? And we do have to seem to make a number up because we just don't have an example of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's no statistical analysis that you're going to do which is going to be convincing, because except to say, look, it's either mundane or it's not mundane. This is what I was saying to you about sample sizes, right? When you were saying to me, like, I think it might have been Travis actually as well, but you know, when I was saying, look, a deck of cards, right, has 52 outcomes, right, and it has a uniform probability distribution within a deck of cards, i.e., all 52 are different, right? So there are 52 outcomes, all of which are different. That means to get any single element, right, you've got a probability of 1 over 52.
Yep.
Right? And that's just definitional, okay? So there is never a time, right, in statistical analysis where you're saying, right, I'm going to take a statistical variable of 0 and use that in my analysis.
Yeah.
Right? That's why you have to guess priors in Bayesian theory.
Yep.
Right? Normally in Bayesian theory, you don't have to guess them necessarily, but in the case
this feels like a guess of what I'm talking about. It's a guess.
Well, what you're talking about when you have no data to fill in the priors, then of course you have to make it up yourself. And a best guess is a best guess, but bearing in mind that's an abductive argument and it's not reliable, no more reliable, well, it's less reliable than an inductive argument as far as I'm concerned.
It's the only point that I wanted to make last night on Travis's, but it was something that, again, there was a big crowd on the subject.
Right. But notice the deck of cards, like we have priors for it. We can plug in the priors precisely.
Sure.
In order to predict what the outcomes are going to be. That's one of my issues. I mean, this is my big issue with the cosmological or the fine-tuning argument.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that you can't, make some priors up, which might have some, give you some approximate values, etc., etc. It's just that we have no data to even make the priors up. Right. Because all we've got is one data point.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas we need like a lot of data points in order to get some handle on the priors. Right. Ideally, we'd want all the data points. So we would want all possible. We want to know what all values are and what their probability distribution is. And we have no way of making up the probability distribution. So when they say, oh, but it's like 10 to the 80 chance of us being here or something like that. Right. Well, no, that's based on the constants, the cosmological constant and all the other constants all having a uniform probability distribution. So if you change them a little bit, right, it's as good as changing them 2 little bits or 3 little bits or 4 little bits, because they're all as probable as each other.
We are going to get back to this. We're in the time. Okay, go ahead.
Let me land the plane then. So the point being here is that that their priors are based on a fallacy straight away that they can't possibly know, right? Yeah. It could be, and this is my analogy, it could be that like a deck of cards, right? 1 in 52 chance, okay, even probability distribution. Well, if I go to a deck of cards and I pull out an ace of spades, okay, that's basically me pulling out the universe, okay? And if I say now, okay, so great, what's the chance now of pulling out another ace of spades? And you're going to say, well, it's 0 because you've already pulled the ace of spades. Oh, look, it doesn't have a uniform probability distribution.
Right.
In fact, it's got a probability distribution of 1 for the ace of spades because they're all the ace of spades. Right?
Interesting.
So that's why the fine-tuning argument just falls even at
among other things
before you've got to the first hurdle even, right?
Yeah.
This is just on my priors say that this is fine-tuned because the constants are so small. It doesn't matter how small the constants are. What matters is the distribution that they would be that way.
Yeah. All right. I am fixing to, we're going to do a short break here. The link is in the description. Q&A is fixing to be opened. We're going to take a quick bathroom break and then we shall be back. But we'll see.
pressure remains. Take the break, don't wait too long. Little things get heavy when you try to be strong. Stand up, breathe out, let it all unwind. Peak break time is a friend of mine. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. I look at the hard way, lesson in tow. What you ignore can come back slow. Keep it moving, keep it sane. A bathroom stop can save you some pain. Take the break, don't wait too long. Little things get heavy when you try to be strong. Stand up, breathe out, let it all unwind. Peak break time is a friend of mine. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Aging comes with its own small test. You do your best and leave the rest. We return shortly to this show. The panel is open, but I have to go. This break won't really take too long. Little things get heavy when you try to be strong. Now the panel's open, answers on the line. Q&A will start in just a little time. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
All right. We got Kurt coming in here. Hope y'all
Fantastic.
enjoyed that.
I just want to point out it says restream while you're running that piss video. That's pretty funny.
That's great. That's fantastic. Can't write this stuff. Sometimes it just happens. The nature of life. What's your thoughts on all this, Kurt?
I think it's a great topic. I think, as I was thinking about this, the idea that any deductive argument or syllogism acts as an explanation is actually just like question begging in and of itself, right? Because it's deductive. It can't explain anything. The only way you can get an explanation is by making some sort of synthetic connection between ideas and the real world. So no explanation can ever be deductive, and therefore no grounding should ever be deductive. Grounding should always be done in an inductive way. Otherwise, all you're doing is restating the premises in a new set of syntax.
Yeah, seems like it all has to start with like the priors, just a recording of the priors, the things that we've experienced thus far. But
Yes.
Q&A. I concur.
Think so. I think so. Well, like I say, this is why I kind of lean on the mathematics, because I think that Bayesian analysis is actually key, and a lot of people misunderstand that. And they think that it's trivial when somebody says extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
They just go, well, what does that even mean? I don't know. And really, it's just a statement of Bayesian reasoning. That's all it really is. So I do find it quite difficult, but I'm not surprised. This idea about landscapes, mathematical landscapes as well, to show that when we're talking about things that are objective, presumably we're talking about things that correlate to the real world. And as such, there's a lot of things that don't, that we call logically possible. Right? And that confusion between the two states, right, which is very obvious I think, to somebody who does mathematics and knows about a mathematical landscape, can grant very easily that, we know there are going to be some things which are not in reality, which are true, but can never be shown to be true. So on that sense, there's going to be some epistemological humility, right? But that doesn't mean that you can suddenly go and say, oh, and in that case, anything that's logically possible, right, is actually possible, right? Which
Yeah.
is the S5 move, right? That doesn't follow. And until that can be explained or justified or grounded, whichever way you want to say it, I don't think grounding has a place where it can be really used in any sense to give it a universal definition. Right? It's
Are you
always going to
saying
be
grounding can't get us to the
stance.
ground?
Well, it's going to be stance dependent,
Yeah.
Right.
right?
I think the other way that I think about this, and you're talking about the mathematical landscape, always reminds me of this. In chemistry, there's the idea of an energy of activation, right? So there can be something that's incredibly unlikely to happen at normal conditions, but if you can bring the energy of the reactants up to a certain level where you can get them to react, then they can release a huge amount more energy at that point. And I think that's sort of what these arguments are trying to do, is get people to think, oh, well, I've gotten this deduction all the way up here, and now I can roll down and get all the way to Jesus resurrecting in Galilee, right? But no, that energy of activation would have to be far different than the sort of stuff that we have now. And we have better evidence of more recent resurrection like tales that have happened in the life of like people alive here, and we don't believe them. We think they're all wrong. So that I just don't think you can take a remote, like textually based thing and get it to that energy of activation, right?
Yeah. This is the whole thing, though, Kurt. It's always been the thing, is like people want to get you to one premise of acceptance. They want to get you, for example, to the philosopher's God, and then somehow connect that to Jesus. Now let's see if we can get the first set. If we can get you to the philosopher's God, now let's. But it's all just drawing like on your sensibilities. Like how far can I get them to come on this subject? Like it's not rooted in anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to get those ideas out. That citrus looks really good, by the way. It is Dad's Day, so I got to get going. I got Dad's Day.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day.
Good seeing both of you.
You
You too.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Anyone and everyone is welcome to come in. Happy Father's Day, by the way, to everyone. I hope you get to spend some time with your kids today. My daughter's supposed to be coming in today. She's been hanging out for like 2 weeks with some cousins, so she's supposed to be coming in today. But I hope everybody gets to spend some time with their kids today. Any questions or anything that anyone has, please put them in the side chat. If you do want to come on stage and say, hey, talk about this subject a little bit, please do so. Link should be pinned in the comments. I think, Robin, hopefully I got it right this time. Hopefully I don't have someone else's link in there. I think I have it correct. Robin told me that I had someone else's thing pinned last time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. On the ball,
that can happen.
much.
Sometimes it doesn't copy to your clipboard correctly.
Yeah.
You still got a previous one.
Yep.
Yay.
Hey, Scott. How's it going, man?
Yay.
Got the grandkids or anything over today? Or your kids?
Oh, hold on. I'm running your video here.
Okay.
There's that delay. But anyway, no, I didn't have the grandkids over today. We were going to, but then I think they had to go see their other granddad, which I'm so jealous. No. No. I'm glad they've got another granddad. Maybe spread some of the energy around so I won't get so much of it all at once with them. But no, we're going to do my Father's Day next week because they have that new Supergirl movie coming out. So my son and I are going to go see that and just celebrate then.
Yeah. Well, good. What's your thoughts on the topic and how philosophy is used poorly by theists? How it's misused?
I missed the first 20 minutes because I took a nap and forgot what time it was. The show started. But I think they do misuse grounding, although I don't know why they don't try to use God at ground at in Paul Tillich's terms. You saw me probably typing some notes in about Paul Tillich and his idea of ground of being, because I think it's slightly different, at least than the idea of the the kind of the explanatory chain to things, that there's this chain of explanation, and everything's finally grounded and I guess in the ultimate explanation for all things, but they don't ever use that phrase ground of being or being itself. And I don't think most evangelicals, at least of the apologetics variety, have worked that into it. But in the middle of the 20th century, man, Paul Tillich was the shit. I mean, he wasn't Billy Graham, but he was like the intellectual theologian, and people just loved to flock and hear him. And he published books and stuff, and he talked about God as the ground of being or being itself. But essentially what he does is he just comes up with a new word to describe something that you really can't prove is real. I can prove reality real, but I can't prove that there is something that gives the realness to all things that are real. So it's just not another way of declaring something God using different words.
Yeah, this might be more of a shift from grounding into necessary, like this necessary being for all things. And this happens all the time. They want to kind of conflate the two. Necessary thing for all things to kick off, which I think is a little different than like the grounding of logic. Again, I think logic is I don't think logic is grounded. I think it's reflective of a physical reality. I don't think the universe is made of facts. I think it's made of things, so to speak.
Right.
And
just
then
things that are in and of themselves, and they have a certain way of relating to one another, either mathematically or just to the energy that they expend towards one another. The transformation of states from one state of matter to another, and then we come along and we try to explain it and describe it either through the language of math or logic or just big long chains of narrative sentences.
Yeah,
and then we put them all together. It's a kind of overlay on what is in and of itself.
We had and Robin's coming in, but I do want to tackle this question right quick. Dade's asking, anybody going to the Ark Encounter? Anybody here on stage? I think Robin's going to the Ark Encounter. I myself, obviously, I don't believe Simos is. He's not in the States. So, I myself, unfortunately, I'm working all through July.
Okay, so I've got a couple of things to say. Firstly, the Paul Tillich question, which Kafi also asked. Look, I just don't think he's giving an explanation of what it is. There's certainly no definition of what grounding is meant by what Paul Tillich is saying. He's just saying, look, whatever it is, I'm calling it a being, and I'm not going to say what the definition of being is.
Yeah, I think he means a different being, though. I haven't read the argument, but the majority of these arguments are not a being like a person. It's just a beingness.
Yeah. It's not a being, right? Yeah. He's just not defining what a being is.
Yeah.
Right? So, or at least, he's not defining what his definition of being is, other than to say it's some, like, ill-defined thing, which is the grounding. So it's just circular logic to say ground of being, if by being you mean grounding.
Yeah, right? Existing exists.
So, yeah. No, it's rubbish. It's rubbish. So no, I don't know Tillich. Yeah, whatever. I've never really read him, so I don't know. But whatever he's saying, I'm not sure that.
I read him back in the '90s, and it was a slog to get through. It really was. I read 2 or 3 of his titles, and it was tough. You have to want to get through it.
Yeah, and I like in this particular argument, I just think it's fallacious, but in the fact that it's so circular. Right, he's just saying the ground of being. It may as well be the being of ground. Those are synonyms. So he's not saying, he's just like saying the ground of ground.
Yeah.
Here,
Robin,
here
how's
is
it going?
here is a kind of a observation from ChatGPT about Tillich.
Okay.
Tillich was deeply influenced by Martin Heidegger, especially Heidegger's distinction between beings, and I think this is a German word. I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but it's kind of a plural word at individual entities. And then there's a distinction between being, capital B, B-E-I-N-G, the fact or reality of existence itself. But see, that's a trick of language. Don't you just think that's a trick of language?
Oh, yeah.
That's a collective kind of word.
Oh, yeah. Just saying, okay, so things are grounded in reality. Okay. Things, right? Things in reality are grounded in reality. Yeah, well done. Yeah. Okay, that's extremely enlightening. I mean, philosophically, there may be a fucking point there, but I don't have time to come up with that. The second thing I just wanted to say was Russell's idea of what a fact is. So he says here, for Russell, a fact is what makes a proposition true or false.
Yeah. Robin, how's it going? Sorry, we hadn't heard from you. You've been on here for a minute.
No, hello. That's fine. I was waiting. I was muting because I've got a fan going and my big old noisy air conditioner was running right there too. So,
yeah.
Hello, Samo.
Hello.
See, I'm sorry I was late.
That's all right.
I fell asleep watching the U.S. Open in my recliner, and I had the alarm set, but I never even heard it go off.
That'll make you sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, golf.
Kafai, yes, we recognise, and if you were listening, you would have heard us say that we realised that Tillich didn't mean being in the anthropomorphic sense.
Yeah.
But that's the problem.
There's a good,
if he didn't mean
chance he was not listening.
If he didn't mean it in the anthropomorphic sense, then he doesn't mean it in any common usage of the word. In which case, we need a prescriptive definition from him, which is more than it's what grounds reality. Right? That's not going to cut it. That's going to be circular.
Let me give you the short version. He's saying that isness can only exist if there's a first is, and God is the first is. I mean, that's just all this really is saying. When we're talking about being, we're talking about existing, we're talking about some brute fact of isness, and that all isness comes from this isness. It's all just.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do with that.
What does he mean by is there except exist?
Right. That's the being. That's all he's doing with being. That's all exactly. That he's doing.
So, okay, something exists. Well, is that a predicate or not? Is that what's Paul Tillich's view on that?
Now, what he tried to do too was take this ontological metaphysics of his, and then take all the theological symbols and terms of Christianity and redefine them in terms of that beingness. And just if you really want to give yourself a headache, just try to read through that stuff. I'm not saying it's not smart or thoughtful. I'm just saying him trying to basically relabel, recreate. It's like getting a Volkswagen and trying to put Mercedes-Benz stickers all over it to make people think it's a Mercedes-Benz or something. I don't know. It's just like he was trying to recalibrate Christianity into those terms.
Well, he's literally just defining it into existence. The ground of being is just being defined into existence. If he thinks it's something real, and again, and if he says that it is existence, then that's even worse, because that's, may as well have just said, "Oh no, existence is what's fundamental." And everybody would have gone, "Oh yeah, nice one, yeah." Like I remember Aristotle saying something similar.
Yeah, something similar, right? It's I don't know. I wouldn't say that he's trying to connect it to Christianity directly. I think everybody always that does these arguments tries to get it to some philosopher's God, and then they say, yeah, this is the Christian God, he's the one. But really, even if you got to the proposition that there is an a conscious mind, like let's say that was fully granted, which it's not because we can't even get that far. But even if it was fully granted that there's a conscious mind, that this is the beginning of all things, it doesn't get you a single step closer to Christianity. It doesn't get you a single. You still cannot tie the two together.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's Christianity. I don't take any of that seriously, but I am interested in like disproving the classical theist God in different ways, or debunking arguments that they'll make for the first move to a creator. Say, you know what I mean, and just saying, look, this doesn't make sense either, right? Fine tuning doesn't get you there. Cosmological argument doesn't get you there. You can't get to a creator that way. Why? Because it's always going to be a God of the gaps. That's just the end. Unless you turn around and say, oh, look, we've documented these miracles. We tested them in a lab. Here's how they're repeatable. Because like Jesus shows up every day at 4:00, comes into the room, and it suddenly starts working. You know.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think even when we do things like a bunch of people claim that this gets you to like, therefore it is. It gets you to a bunch of people believe. Like that's what it connects you to. Like if you have a bunch of people that claim X is true, then all that can connect you to is a bunch of people believe that is true.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Like, is there any? I can hardly think of any argument that we get that is not some form of fallacy, or like special pleading or something. Like every one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all exception. I've said it before. You've heard me say it, Robin. It's all exception. It's all like God is the exception to every logical rule. Like if we kind of trying to get to a conclusion and we're using deduction, like we have to presuppose. They'll make this proposition that you have to presuppose. Well, presupposition of anything is a logical fallacy. Yeah, but not in this case. You have to presuppose here to get the whole ball rolling. So there's always this exception, whether we're talking about the PSR, whether we're talking about any causal states. Like God is always has to be an exception to the rule. Even when they make the formation, all things that began to exist, they make that statement because they want God to not be included in the proposition. So all things that began to exist, why don't you just say all things that exist? You're saying all things that began because you're trying to make an exclusion for your proposition. It's always exclusion of, to make him a different thing that we can come to it with a different type of logic.
Well, that particular, that specific like part of the argument, I think William Lane Craig is the one that like altered the original Kalam.
Yeah,
and I think he did that around what he thought the Big Bang was going to turn out to say, and now they've kind of changed, because I think he thought that the Big Bang, they were saying the Big Bang was the beginning of the universe or whatever, and so he thought that was going to let God already exist, but the Big Bang had a beginning. See, he thought that. Then it comes out that they don't say that that's what it is. So it didn't exclude the universe from the same thing that he was wanting his God to be excluded from.
Yeah, we got somebody coming in late here saying, "What's the problem with philosophy?" There's no problem.
Can I address the one before that?
Sure. What was the one before that? Kafai?
Yeah, Kafai is one. In Christianity, the ground is referred to as the Father. It's term literally used in opposite of the mother of nature, not to mean some literal paternalistic anthropomorphic entity, but the ground. I mean, a little bit sexist there, but apart from that, look, that's the problem. If you're just going to say God is ground, is the ground, the grounding of, right, then we're not moving forward. We're not. We can now ask, well, how is that a grounding, right? How does God give value to all of this stuff, right? And you're going to come up with some story again, right, which is unfalsifiable again, right? So all we're doing is laying on one premise or one deductive argument on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, and we're never going to get to this time or the place where we're getting to a necessary conclusion for that, right?
Yeah, it's just all claim. Like we can make the statement that like the physical bruteness of reality like is the foundation of all things, and then they could say yes, but what grounds that? And they could say, well, God grounds that, and then we could just come back and say yes, but what grounds God? Like this is all just this is ridiculous at this point. It's not getting anywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean it's it's a God of the gaps, right? Because all his justifications about being God being a grounding are going to themselves need grounding, right?
Yeah.
And they're just going to point back to God. So if you say, well, what grounds God? Okay, well, it's the ground of God. Okay, so is God the grounding, or is he the ground of God?
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to address this one here because I keep seeing this argument. This argument is starting to frustrate me. It's because it's so dishonest. Like no one is saying that something that is unfalsifiable doesn't exist. What we're saying, if it's unfalsifiable, it can't be known. This is not the same thing. It's not an ontological question. It's an epistemological question. So if you can't falsify, you can't know. That's all that needs to be stated there, not that it doesn't exist. So when you say in the affirmative that it does exist, by what justification do you have to say that it exists if it can't be falsifiable? That's the problem. It's nothing to do with the ontology. It's to do with the epistemics.
Yeah. So, for instance, I guess if it's unfalsifiable, then there is no way you can say the proposition is false.
Yeah.
Right. But by the same consequence, right, because you can't say that it is false, that doesn't mean that it is true. Right? Because it could be false. You just can't say it. Right? Just because we don't know. That just shows the limitations of us as human beings more than it shows the limitation of what propositions are.
It can be known if God revealed himself to us. Did he? I don't think so. I don't think that this story is particularly different than any other, story of God's revealing themselves. Seems to toe the same line of all the religions that some God revealed themselves to them.
But the Bible doesn't show God or prove God. God still remains unfalsifiable after you read the Bible.
Right.
Nonsense statement there, Otangelo.
Yeah, the Bible's proclamations are evidence that someone believed the Bible's proclamations. That's what they're evidence of. I mean, if I make a statement that I saw a UFO, that's not evidence of the UFO as much as it is evidence that I believe that I saw a UFO. But any more questions or anything y'all have in the side chat, please put them up there.
According to Hitchens, if the claim is unfalsifiable, we need not even consider it. We can completely dismiss the claim. Yeah, I don't think we can. If it's unfalsifiable, that we can dismiss the claim, right? That's not what. That certainly isn't something that I would say. I would just say that if it's unfalsifiable, then the chances of us being able to show that it is true is considerably diminished. Right? Yeah, we may find a way to falsify it in future, right? So we're not saying that it's false or that it's true, but that doesn't give you a reason to believe it's true. If it's unfalsifiable, then you have no reason to believe it's true.
Yeah,
there can be no reason as far as I can see.
You can't tell if it's like God. If God could either exist or not exist, and we have no way to determine which one of those is correct, so I don't like. I think then once we get to that part, then we have to say, well, do we see other gods in nature? No, what I mean. So like when it comes down to being an unfalsifiable thing, that we should maybe just kind of look at like look at the probability of it or something. And like, I don't think we have a very good probability of a God existing, since we seems like every other God that has ever been proposed, those people don't believe in. That's just this one specific God. You know, how many thousands of gods have there been in existence of humans? And
Yeah.
they want to they don't presuppose that those gods are real. They just have this
Yeah.
one favorite God that they like to latch onto and say, "Oh, this is the real one."
Yeah. Even if I put the probability of a God existing, even if we were able to get it to 100, I don't know how, but like the probability that God wants us to know that it exists when it doesn't seem to demonstrate it, like that probability is still close to zero, that it wants us to know that it exists.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You just got to think that it allowed people to believe in all these other gods for
Exactly.
for all this time too. Like, obviously, it doesn't. It's not really demanding worship by everybody.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah. Question: what do you think about the studies in mystical experiences, of course, and the claims that these professionals who say they so that what they induce is their volunteer is virtually identical to what mystics have called the another statement revelation of the Holy Spirit? What's the individual that writes the book on the 5 emotions that religions...
Finish the question. If in this case, then it's possible to have a revelatory experience that Christianity points towards. Yeah, exactly, Christianity. If you go and do the same experiment in India, you'll find it points to Hinduism, and you do the same experiment in China, you'll find another god, and the same one in Africa, another god, etc., etc. So all you're doing is showing that somebody has the belief that they have a revelation of the Holy Spirit, right? And the way you put the question in the first place, right, which is what you think about studies in mystic experiences of claims that these professionals who say that they induce in their volunteers is identical what mystics have called revelation of the Holy Spirit. Only in Christian countries does that happen. Only by Christians do they have revelation from the Holy Spirit, right? Nowhere else, right? So this is not a universal case. This is a subjective case, depending on the human that you're talking to. And that shows that it's not a universal or necessary conclusion that Christianity is true.
So it's an old book called The Varieties of Religious Experiences, based on a lecture published in 1902. It's from William James. He points out inside of the lecture, and I think the book is basically the lecture notes of the 5 individually described religious experiences. And some of them are a sense of like belonging to the world. You have these 5 different experiences that are prevalent, and not only are these 5 super consistent, but they're across every religion. They're consistent inside of a religion, and they're consistent across multi-facets of religion. So, and this is a great book if everybody wants to check this out. This is actually on Internet Archive. It is a free book that he talks about these 5 religious experiences. But these are sensations that happened, and you can try to relate these to the Holy Spirit, but you can try to relate them to any other religion as well. Darklight, what's up, man?
I heard you guys were talking about me.
I don't think so particularly, but maybe on some subjects that you get into.
Let me just answer back on one.
Okay.
We'll push back on Kafai a little bit again. So he says, sure, that's precisely what these professionals are saying, that the phenomenology is virtually identical across cultures. It's not identical across cultures. One of them's Jesus, one of them's Ganesh, one of them's someone else. There's the things which make them unified is that somebody is having an experience, not that the experience is the same.
Yeah, it's like dog sneezes have a universal similarity to all dogs. I mean, that doesn't tell you anything about the essence of what causes the sneeze. Like it's just that they have genetic similarities in their structures is all there is. So people have emotional similarities, emotional similar complexities. They wind up bringing forth these 5 particular phenomenal experiences. That it's only showing a similarity in the structure of the brain. That's all it's indicative of, not of an external thing.
Okay, sorry, just wanted to clear that up. Go ahead, Doc. If you did, you have anything about grounding that you wanted to add?
Well, I just saw the title for the show, which is why I said you guys were talking about me, because that's me. I'm a theist, and I use philosophy to justify my theism.
Yeah.
Well, the subject we were particularly using is the subject of grounding, particularly on how we say that everything has to be grounded inside of X, or that logic specifically has to be grounded in. And this is a proposition that's regularly put forth by a theist, that you can't ground logic without getting to this beingness. So what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I know most of you guys know me, but in case anyone in the audience doesn't know me, followers of Abraham are blood cult of sin worshippers. Yahweh, Jesus, and Allah are desert war gods of hypocrisy, not the actual one true creator. I do believe in a naturalistic proposition of the one true creator who is intrinsically incorporated into every single quanta and void within existence, which is dramatically different from the proposition of the followers of Abraham, who say that the creator is apart from.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, we got the gist of that.
Did we?
Yeah. Well, it's I think, and I've seen several emails from Darklight. He is breaking up pretty heavy now, but I've received some emails from him on something of a framework and a model that he's using, that he's been developing of his own, is my understanding. Though it has some similarities of, dare I say, pantheism, but it's not quite the same. It has some propositions that are built into there about like the fundamental nature of reality, that the repetition of fractal, what's the fractal one, Darklight? That everything's fractal repetition.
I have a big list of comparative analysis between my theology or philosophy and other philosophies, and there are overlaps and parallels to other systems such as panpsychism and idealism. But there's also differences. The biggest difference is most of those other philosophies. Fuck, man. Guys, come on. My dogs are playing. Sorry.
Okay.
Philosophy stop at consciousness, and they say consciousness is the most fundamental trait. But I do not believe it. That's one major thing that sets me apart from them. Is that unity is actually a trait of existence. Beyond the consciousness, there is unity, which allows the consciousness, and so that's the major difference between me and them.
So in unity, what do you mean? You think it's the most fundamental, right? Is unity like that everything is in some sense universally connected, or how far do we go with this subject?
So you can look into geometric unity, which is a theory proposed by Eric Weinstein, which is one of my empirical justifications for citing unity as the most fundamental trait. And also there is the Big Bang and superposition. Okay, at one point everything was actually perfectly united within the Big Bang, and it holds that anything that was once united is still united throughout all time and space through the superposition link.
What does that mean, though? Unity. What is unity?
Unity is a underlying fundamental trait that holds everything together. I do have.
So but then all that is like an explanation of the gap, right? You've got a gap, and you're saying, well, there's something in it that explains everything, but we don't know what it is. We're going to call it unity.
Well, I'm not gap phobic like a lot of theists. So
Huh?
I happily embrace gaps. I'm not afraid of a little
Oh,
gap.
okay. Yeah. I mean, I just mean by unity, you're not giving it any content. You're not giving the word any content, which is meaningful. So I don't see how it can be used as an explanation.
So there's this fact that what is it? The field, what is it? The electron field, the electric field of atoms that they extend infinitely, right? Or ideally, they extend infinitely.
I don't know what you mean, but yes, exactly. So
Okay.
Gravitational field is a long distance force. Yeah.
No, it's not a gravitational field that we're talking about. Here,
Okay.
I'll read you from
So
a section here.
photoelectric.
Here, in modern physics, quantum fields, which underline all particles, fundamental extend infinitely across all space. The ideal is that this extends fundamentally across space. But there is additionally, I know, I know, all space.
Carry on.
Right.
Yeah,
and then there's additionally this ideal of field interactions, the electromagnetic fields of an individual particle, that it goes down greatly as it gets farther away, but that it reduces. And I don't know about how this interacts with the Planck scale. I do not know. But there's a notion that this field interacts in indefinite.
Right, in theory, yeah. In theory,
right.
Yeah. I mean, but in practice, I mean, this is an old question, isn't it? Like, why at night isn't the sky completely bright if there's stars in every direction?
Right. It reduces constantly. Or even more so, why we can't see certain stars at a distance if that light is coming, constantly.
Yeah.
At some point, it's undetectable by us.
Yeah, dark light. You got a lot of noise coming off your microphone. Okay, thank you. So light it diminishes, or it's not the strength I'm looking for even. The density as the photons diminish by squared distance, I think.
So would the unity by some degree. If in an instance,
unity doesn't make me.
I know it doesn't mean much to me.
Saying.
But
I mean, you're just saying, look, I have an explanation. I'm going to call it unity, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So what do you mean by unity?
That's not what I'm saying at all. I mean that's okay. What you're saying. I'm saying that's not what I'm saying.
Clarify for us, then, please.
Please do.
Yeah. But I can write about it a lot better than I can talk about it. I'm kind of a fucktard when it comes to speaking.
I've read some of your stuff.
I
mean, obviously, I have some problems with some of it, but I have read. I think I gave you a little feedback on some of it. But I'm obviously. I think there's some problems with it. I think a little of it is trying to reach for. Like there's these alt statements and meaning, and we're trying to put meaning inside of these things rather than keeping the subjects separate of there's this physical thing in reality and there's these physical operations, and then there's internally in us how we find meaning. And I think it's trying to stretch to some degree the meaning that we want in things and make that meaning kind of more encompassing of the physical things. And I personally think that's an error. I think certain things give us meaning, but we're trying to bridge the is-alt problem. Almost, it seems like to some degree, your ideology is trying to bridge that. Does that make sense?
I wouldn't agree with that exactly, but
okay.
That's your perception,
Yeah.
Could you just write a definition in the chat then for what unity is, or what you mean by unity?
Hey Robert, I'm gonna jump down.
Okay.
It's good seeing you, and you too.
Hey, you too, Robert.
Diane and Scott. Thank y'all, and
see you, Robin.
Yeah. It's just something like the package of everything that you have. It's such a large package to try to come in anywhere in the middle of that and not understand that framework, because that framework is something that you would have to understand a lot of the framework to understand some of the definitions, and then to give feedback on some of like the general framework of how we think reality works and how that interacts with that. But like, if we don't have the more of your general definitions of words and terminologies, there's going to be a little bit of disconnect, clearly.
Yeah, well, I mean, properly prepared to jump on here and talk to you about all that, really. I mean, I was just in the middle of writing my book, but I don't have everything right in front of me that I've come up with.
Sure.
But I just wanted to jump on here real quick, but
yeah, I seen Scott said in the side chat here that he was fixing a bail. Appreciate it, Scott. Have a good one, man.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Okay. You know, that's fine. That's fine. You know, some of what I was talking about earlier was that, you know, the more unfalsifiable you make your God, then the more dependent on definition you become. And that's where I think the grounding and equivocation fallacies really start kicking in. And I think that's reasonably obvious. However, you know, when you're talking about specifics, then there's a lot of other fallacies. Straw manning, for instance. Well, you know, if I prove your atheism wrong, that must mean my theism is true. That's a fallacy which I hear quite a lot.
Yep.
So they want to say things like, well, evolution bad because it gives you no access to truth, only survival. Right? That's Plantinga's argument. And you know, it's dog shit as well. Of course, we're still gonna have these.
Took off.
Yeah, it's fine if.
Yep.
Yeah, can't defend the view of unity. That's the problem.
It's less perhaps that I can't handle opposing views than I don't know how to engage with something that is. I don't see where it has a way to connect to reality or have any sense of falsifiability. Like if someone came to me with an opposing view that I don't know that all the air we breathe are made out of tiny unicorns, like there's tiny unicorn particles that we breathe in, for example. Like I don't know what the hell to do with that. What the hell am I supposed to do with that? I don't. It's just a proposition that. Well, it doesn't seem like that's what unicorns are. So there's this other thing that is just unicorn likeness. Like there's so many problems embedded in the statement that I don't know how to engage with the statement, and much less the problem of the falsifiability. So yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, like okay, so there's a couple of ways. There's a couple of ways you can look at it, right? So again, going back to the mathematical landscape. Right, you could say, look, if there's a contradiction, then it doesn't have to be proved false, right? We know it's false just by definition, right? So,
yeah,
you know, like we can say it that way, right? In which case, there's the thing. There's also the question of absence of evidence. Is that evidence of absence, right?
Yeah.
And again, there are, under certain circumstances, that is the case, right? When we have expectations of what we would expect there to be, if the thing was true, right? Then we can also disprove it that way by saying, well, we don't see these events or propositions propositions being derived that are true or predictions being true. So therefore, we would expect them to be there if this thing was true.
Yeah.
So that's another way, even if something is unfalsifiable, that it can be shown to be false, right? So this falsifiable criteria in itself is a bit of a misnomer if you apply it to, say, things like deductive arguments versus inductive arguments. And when I think, is it Kripke? Is it no? Popper. When Popper was applying it, I think he was mostly applying it to the inductive arguments and saying, look, if something is inductively unfalsifiable, it means that we're never going to have enough data, or we don't have enough data to make any kind of justified leap from all observed A's or B's, right?
Yeah.
Therefore,
it
A
is
is
Karl
B.
Popper.
If you've only got one, for
and
instance.
he is using it to the induction 100%. But yeah, I wanted to mention this also, and we're fixing to be wrapping up here in a little bit.
Yep.
Leophilius mentions on here, well, if atheism is false, then it follows that theism, or at least deism, is true. Again, that defines what you mean by theism. I mean, if we consider the people who create the program, if we're inside of the AI system, if we consider them an ism that is a theo, the theoism, if that's a god that is the programmer, okay, but then we're loosely using the term god now that it extends even to the programmer of the matrix in which we sit, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with
well
that.
well no, I made a little mistake there.
Well, I don't. Go ahead.
Well, atheism is, I hate the term prove atheism wrong, because atheism is like a proposition of that there isn't a God in the affirmative is how it's being used here. So if you prove that one, so then theism is inside of the proposition, then the opposite would be true, rather than if you would say a whatever word that might be an external mental mind, that would be something very different. So anyway, I didn't want to muddy up the water with that too much.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and like again, the reason I said it the way I said it is not necessarily to be particularly accurate, because I was saying what the theist position was, which we know is false. So I wasn't claiming that what I said was true. I was claiming it was false, and this is one of the criticisms that we get, right? We're going to show atheism to be false, right? And then we're going to say Christianity is true. That's what they tend to do, right? And I'm not sure you can show atheism to be false by a deductive argument, or an inductive argument, or vice versa. I think the question is completely open in that sense of the word, right? So,
this definition's just not true, by the way, Antangelo. It's just factually not true, because a deity like Ra from the Greeks, he stepped out of the primordial water. He had a beginning. There was a start, and he's not the only God that in the proposition of gods has a start. So even the proposition of eternal is not always a characteristic assigned to gods.
Yeah, and also deism has several different flavors, right?
Yeah.
So, it could be a god that killed himself creating the world. It could be a god that created the world and wants nothing to do with it. It could be a god that created the world and then, it infuses it rather than in the laws of nature, being a pantheist, So there's many different versions here which we're talking about.
Yeah, that's not a straw man. That is a fact. That is one of the oldest known gods that we know of, and that is Ra. And Ra stepped out of the primordial water. Ra had a beginning. It is the oldest. It was at the time the most worshipped god that there was, and we know that in the lore and in the definitions, written in the hieroglyphs, that there was a start. Ra had a beginning. So you can call that a straw man all you want, but Ra is older than your God in ideology to start with. He's got older documentation, and he had a beginning. So,
yeah, at least in history.
In history, right?
And if you think history is important for your 5 facts argument, Otangelo, then you have to grant history as being irrelevant when it comes to talking about Ra or the ancient gods or gods of Sumeria or the stories about floods or the stories about creation or any of the stories about leaving Egypt, right?
Yeah, it's a category though. He said he didn't write it about Ra, but you use theism, and theism it just is a category of beliefs. So those people who worshipped Ra, they were theists. That's just a fact.
Yeah, and you have to make it more specific. You can't just claim that because you worship, because you think theism is true, therefore Christianity is the right form of theism. That doesn't follow. You have to make separate arguments for those, and you don't. You just don't. The arguments you do make have all been thoroughly debunked, right?
Yeah. All right, I do believe we're going to wrap it up, and we don't have any secondary guests on here today.
It was absolutely lovely to get the straw man fallacy in at the end, because that is a very common one. we have to deal with. So thank you very much, Dr. Angelo, for showing us.
Got it in at the buzzer.
for getting the straw man over the line. That is a common one.
Yeah. So that one having been said, let's do a little wrap up. A lot of our panelists that were in here have already left. I did want to let you know now inside of the description of the video, you will see several guests that are regular panelists that come on. You'll have links to them. And of course, our main guest today has been Simos from Simos Funk. You can check him out. He does not only a few videos on this subject, but also he messes with the subject of Formula One quite regularly. But anything else you want to add about yourself, Simos?
Not really. I just enjoy the conversation more than anything, and I would urge people to do the same. There's no need to get particularly involved in politics when it comes to this particular conversation because it's tough enough as it is. So I think let's not try to be too intersectional when it comes to the great debate community.
Yeah. Excellent. That said, let me go ahead and give the wrap up here. And if you hold tight, I'll chat with you in a minute. All right, everyone. I thank you for joining us today. I know it's Father's Day, and maybe that's deterred some people, or maybe it slowed it down a little bit. But everybody, I definitely encourage you to spend some time with your family today. Spend some time with your kids if you can. Appreciate everyone for joining today. And as always, be skeptical and be skeptical of your skepticism.